Welcome to the Capital News. I am your host, Alex Karitis. Thank you so much for joining me today. It is March 13th, 2019. We have quite a few news stories to get to today, covering a lot of things from Paul Manafort, Brexit updates, college admission scandal, and then if we have time, we'll get into some of the release of the Lisa Page, the former lawyer at the FBI. Her closed-door testimony was released, so maybe if we have some time, we'll get into that, and hopefully we do, because there's a lot there. If not, I will definitely follow up with that tomorrow. But let's get started here with Paul Manafort, and just to recall everybody and refresh everybody's memory, Paul Manafort was the former campaign chairman for Donald Trump. He helped maneuver candidate Trump through the nomination process. He's a political operator. Not saying this man is above the law, because he's not. Nobody is. But he does know how to shake hands. He does know how to get votes and motivate those delegates, and that's what Donald Trump hired him to do, and he was successful in doing that and secured the nomination for Donald Trump, who is now our president. So Mr. Manafort was sentenced to a total of 7.5 years. If you recall, last week he was sentenced to serve 43 months, and today he got the same sentence for an additional 43 months, and of course the 9 months that he has already spent in prison will count towards that sentence. There is the possibility on good behavior that he could be out in 6 years, and then I believe he would be on probation for an additional 3 years. He is also ordered to pay millions of dollars in restitution for tax fraud. Now, I don't think the man has the money, especially not millions of dollars, especially given the amount that he undoubtedly had to spend to defend himself over those courses. And to add insult to injury for the man, again, he's not above the law, but this is just one thing after the other for him. He now faces 16 additional charges from the District Attorney of Manhattan related to business and mortgage fraud. Now, these would be considered state crimes, so Trump could not pardon him if he is convicted of these additional 16 charges. Now, the president can pardon Paul Manafort for the federal offenses, but not for the state, if in fact he is convicted. So here we have Paul Manafort. He is charged, tried, and convicted. My question to you, ladies and gentlemen, is, what about the Clintons? You remember the Clinton Foundation investigation? You remember that discussion we had here on the podcast? And if you don't, I highly recommend you take the time to listen to that podcast. And in addition to that, take the time to get on YouTube and to look up the testimony of Mr. Doyle and Mr. Moynihan. These are financial investigators. These are external whistleblowers, if you will. It is their job to look into companies, nonprofits that claim nonprofit status, 501c3s. This is what they are claiming. Okay? The Clinton Foundation claims to be a nonprofit organization. Mr. Doyle and Mr. Moynihan, they are not tasked or charged from the federal government to do this. This is their day job. This is what they do for a living. Well, it was the request of Congress at the time, when the Republicans were in the majority, that they come before Congress and testify. And if you watch this on YouTube, or if you paid attention to the podcast when I gave this description, there was basically nobody there to interview these guys. You had the chairman, you had a couple other congressmen and women, and that was it. I mean, it was not a three-ring circus like we've been seeing under Adam Schiff and under Elijah Cummings and under Maxine Waters and all that stuff. The three-ring circus wasn't there for this. Why? Because it had nothing to do with Donald Trump. It had everything to do with Bill and Hillary Clinton. And there's a double standard in this country, don't you know? Aren't you aware of that? So the interest was not there, and it most definitely was not there from the mainstream media. But they were there in full force when it has to do with Donald Trump, when it had to do with his former attorney and fixer, Michael Cohen, and the whole other cast and crew. Anybody that has to deal with the Republicans, with the conservatives, and most especially with Donald Trump, his campaign, his organization, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. Remember Jerry Nadler? The 81 people and organizations that are on his list of people that he wants to testify and have written responses to? Your name's on that list, and so is mine, right? That's what they're looking for. It's a witch hunt, up and down. If it has to do with the Clintons, nothing to see here. Nothing to see here at all. So let's look at this in the context of Mr. Manafort and how it relates very closely to the Clintons and the Clinton Foundation. Mr. Manafort, again, was tried and convicted of tax fraud. Okay? Not above the law. He was there with the jury of his peers. They convicted him. And now you've had 2 separate judges sentence him to 7.5 years. Okay, he's gone. Well, what about the Clintons? They're still roaming free. Why? If you listen to the testimony of Mr. Doyle and Mr. Moynihan, you would know that these guys take their job very seriously, that the only way that they make money is by bringing these cases forward to the federal agencies who would be responsible for this. In this instance, it would be the FBI, Department of Justice, and the Treasury Department, because it's the Treasury Department that gives these exemptions, that says, okay, you are a not-for-profit organization, so you're tax exempt. You don't have to pay any taxes. The problem is, according to the testimony from Mr. Doyle and Mr. Moynihan, they were engaging, the Clintons were engaging in for-profit activity. Not only that, they were acting as foreign agents. Now, acting as a foreign agent is not illegal. You have the Foreign Agent Registration Act, FARA. Okay? Mr. Manafort fell under the same thing. However, just like the Clintons, he didn't dot his I's and cross his T's, and furthermore, he committed tax fraud, and he was charged, tried, and convicted for it. Now, supposedly, and again, if you follow the podcast and you look up that investigation, the Clinton Foundation is under investigation by a U.S. attorney out of Utah, John Huber. His office is supposedly looking into this. Are charges going to be brought? Is it really being looked into? I hope it's being looked into. That's what Mr. Doyle and Mr. Moynihan alluded to, that they've had conversations with the DOJ on this, with that U.S. Attorney's Office. And to them, in their professional opinion, it made it seem like, yes, they were actually looking into it. Because what we know now, just as a refresher for those of you who paid attention to the podcast on that, and for those of you who don't know, they submitted these claims of basically tax fraud to the Treasury Department. And in the first go-around, the Treasury Department shot it down. But they said, appeal it. Send us further information as to why we should consider this. And they did. What was their information? What was their evidence further that says, you know, guys at the Treasury Department, you should really look into this? What was that evidence they sent them? They sent them physical photographs of FBI agents down in Little Rock, Arkansas, which is the headquarters of the Clinton Foundation, taking boxes of documents out of the foundation and into an airplane to be taken back to either Washington, D.C. or over to Utah. Do you hear what I just said? The FBI, and I think there was also Treasury Department officials down there too, taking documents from the Clinton Foundation to an either Washington, D.C. office or the U.S. Attorney's Office out in Utah. So now what's the Treasury Department to do? I mean, maybe the first go-around they thought maybe it was nothing here, but they didn't know. The right hand didn't know what the left hand was doing. I mean, that's how big the government is. You have a certain official in the Treasury Department looking at this request from Mr. Doyle and Mr. Moynihan, but he doesn't know. He's not a field agent. He doesn't know that there's somebody else in another branch of government, in the DOJ and the FBI, or even within the Treasury Department, who's down in Little Rock, Arkansas, collecting documents from the Clinton Foundation. Now, this isn't small pennies either. According to Mr. Doyle and Mr. Moynihan, $400 million to $2.5 billion could be taxable. That's a huge amount that could be taxable. These guys make their living finding this type of fraud and abuse. And then you have the Treasury Department seek rewards. They want their money back because it's not a tax-free organization. They should have been taxed on this money. So now the Clintons might have a problem. They're going to have to pay tax on potentially $400 million to $2.5 billion. You think they have that saved up, ready to go, ready to check to Uncle Sam? they might have some problems. And that Mr. Doyle and Mr. Moynihan, if the Treasury Department does actually go after them and does receive damages, then those two individuals, Doyle and Moynihan, will receive a percentage of that, which could range anywhere from 10% to, I think, upwards of 35%, which is a huge amount on $400 million, let alone $2.5 billion. So here we have it now. We have Mr. Manafort, who is most definitely not above the law. Nobody is. Charged, tried, convicted. He will now spend at least 6 years behind bars. He's an older gentleman. I don't know how well his health is. Surely it's not going to get any better being in prison. But that's going to eat up a good chunk of the rest of his life. And now he is facing another 16 charges from the District Attorney of Manhattan. Well, what about the Clintons? Do we have a two-lane track here of justice in this country? Sure seems like that, doesn't it? Now, I've alluded to in previous podcasts, maybe there's some fireworks coming up. Maybe this will be March Madness in a broader sense than just the collegiate basketball tournament. That there might be some stuff coming out. Is this part of it? Is the Clinton Foundation investigation, is that going to be a part of it? Because I'm going to tell you, you can't have Paul Manafort go through this and then just say the Clintons are absolutely fine. Because it's just not the case. And then you have to take this into consideration too. Not only are the monies that they brought in over the many years since they've had the Clinton Foundation subject to taxation, potentially, again, innocent until proven guilty, but so would be the donors. Because people who donate to charities do it a lot of times for tax write-off. So they didn't have to pay tax on it. Well, now if it's found that the Clinton Foundation was actually a for-profit organization, well, now they're going to be subject to taxation as well, so that's not going to be too good for their donors. Now, if you understand the Clinton Foundation, the vast majority of the money that flew into that organization only came from a handful of players. That's all it was. It was heavily lopsided. Pay for play, no doubt about it. Doyle and Moynihan were asked about that during their testimony, and they said it most definitely showed signs of pay for play. And who's going to be surprised? And again, I've said previously, if Bill and Hillary Clinton wanted to go into business for profit, why didn't they just go into business for profit? I mean, who's going to say that that's the wrong thing to do? You want to be a foreign agent? Do it. File the necessary paperwork, dot your I's, cross your T's, and say, look, we have positions, we know people all over the world, this is what we want to do, go have it. Since when do they really care what anybody thinks of them? I mean, you don't go into those types of positions. Sure, you have a big ego, but you got to get over it, too, at the same time. You want to make your millions of dollars? Go make your millions of dollars. But do it legally. I mean, these people are sick. They could have done this legally. They could have dotted their I's, crossed their T's, did for-profit activity, made a killing, and they could have lived happily ever after. But they can't because they're criminals, evidently. They're sick in the head. They're sick in the head. So we'll see if this leads to March Madness. We'll see if this leads to fireworks. I hope, for the sake of justice, that they are charged, tried, and convicted. I really do. Because there's no doubt in my mind that they're guilty of something. They're guilty of something. Tax fraud might be the least of it. Just gets me going. It's just one thing after the other. And that'll tie into the whole Lisa Page thing, too, if we have time to get there today. Separately, across the pond, a Brexit update for you. British lawmakers voted 312 to 308 in favor of the Spellman Amendment, ruling out a no-deal Brexit under any scenario. The amendment went further than the government's motion, which was also backed by MPs, which stated that leaving without a deal remained the legal default unless a deal is agreed. So the saga continues. We are not surprised by this. We know yesterday that Theresa May, the Prime Minister of UK, her deal was once again shut down as it was back in January. However, this deal could pop up again. It's my understanding that the deal could make another appearance for another vote, and I think just by the way of the rules of Parliament and the legislative process, I think it could come up by March 20th. which would, if it was to pass for the third time, on the third try, that would give enough time, I guess, for it to go through the procedural processes for there actually to be a deal and a Brexit on the current deadline of March 29th. Now, what happens tomorrow? There is going to be another vote where the members of Parliament get to say if they want to extend Article 50. Well, Article 50 has to deal with the March 29th deadline. Now, there's no great discussion or great detail being provided as to how long and how far this can will get kicked down the road. But what I'm hearing and what I'm reading is it might be through June. Well, that would overlap the EU Parliament elections, which I believe are slated to take place in May. So again, I've said it many times here before. I don't know how the people of the UK can vote to send any type of representative to the EU Parliament when they've already said, we're out, we're gone. This is it. I mean, if you wanted to send people over there for the interim until you have a process, until you actually are gone, I get that. But now it's it. This is the deadline. You've had 2.5 years, going on 3, especially if you kick the can down the road to June. It will be 3 years. I mean, you can't just get to throw your hands up and say, well, this is difficult. We just didn't foresee it being this hard. So, go back to the drawing board. Because again, you have some people who are calling for another general election, which could obviously mean the ousting of Prime Minister May. Or you have people also calling for a potential second referendum, which is just an insult to the institution of democracy and to the people who voted to leave. Say, no, children, you didn't know what you were doing. It's very difficult. Leave this to the adults in the room. Get back to it. That's not how it works. Keep voting until you vote our way. That's not how it works. I'm not even a citizen of the UK and I'm getting upset. And I hope Brexit takes place sooner rather than later because that was the will of the people. That's what they voted for. If by some cynical political maneuvering it does not happen, I hope the people of the UK revolt. And I mean that. To my core, I mean that. Because this is getting out of hand. This program is about the truth. I have a disdain for power, for powerful institutions, for especially the government, and people in government who abuse their power. I have a big problem with that. Huge problem. Huge. If they abuse that power and tell the people to go back and vote again until you vote how we want you to vote, I really hope that the people of the UK revolt and take their country back, because that is what the majority wanted back in 2016. They didn't want to delegate their sovereignty to a bunch of no-name bureaucrats, no-named and overpaid bureaucrats in Brussels to determine their future. It's not right. It's not right at all. So I will most definitely keep you updated. I expect they will probably kick the can further down the road. They will probably extend Article 50, but who knows? It might not happen. They might say that, no, that's it, but then it's going to really push things closer to the 11th hour, 59th minute, and 59th second of what we're going here, because you're talking March 29th. That's only a couple weeks away. It's only a couple weeks away. So I will most definitely keep you guys updated because it's an interesting story. Now, on to the college admissions scandal. I'm sure most of you are aware, as this is taking up some of the spotlight in the mainstream media. To me, it's more or less a nothing burger. Who is surprised by this, to be honest with you? But I think this is another thread in the story of this March Madness stuff and a preparation of what's to come. Okay, I think a lot of the things that have been coming out recently is all connected as a slow drip, to prepare the American people for what might be taking place behind the scenes. This is all speculation. This is intuition. This is what I happen to believe is taking place, because I'm not one to believe in coincidence. So I think the college admission thing, because it has to do with a lot of celebrities and a lot of business executives, I think you can tie this in with a lot of other things that we have seen over the past couple of years since President Trump has been in office. This has to go with the Me Too movement. I think this has to do with the border wall. Obviously, people are upset and infuriated with the illegal immigration discussion, but I think the heart of that really went to the president educating the people on what else is going on there, and it has a lot more than just illegal immigration. It has to do with drugs. It has to do with weapons. It has to do with human trafficking and sex trafficking, because those types of things are not covered day to day in the mainstream media or anywhere else for that matter. Of course, you get to talk about the hot button issue of illegal immigration, and that gets a whole bunch of people going. Okay. Well, why aren't you talking about the humanitarian crisis of human trafficking and sex trafficking and all of the abuses that takes place there? Why aren't you screaming at the top of your lungs about the opioid and drug crisis that is in this country and is killing people and destroying families and communities in local economies? Where's the temper tantrum over that? There is none. There is none. So I think the president is bringing that to light. What about the whole thing down in Florida in regards to Bob Kraft, the owner of the New England Patriots and a big business executive, being caught up in that quote-unquote massage parlor, which may be linked up to human and sex trafficking, and supposedly there's a whole bunch of other big wigs, and their names may be dropping too. I think this is all connected. And not only that, you have the Lisa Page testimony behind closed doors coming out and being declassified. Not 100% declassified, because I went through the document. It's about 165 pages, and there still are things that are redacted, but most of it obviously has been disclosed. So I think this is just a drip, drip, drip of what's to come to prepare people that, hey, look, all of these people you look up to, all of these stars, all of these actresses and actors, and all of these big names on TV, and all of these sports figures and business titans that everybody admires, there might be a lot of dirty laundry coming out, and it might not be good. It might be beyond dirty laundry. It might be rather illegal. It might be rather illegal, and we will see what happens with that. But I just think this college admissions scandal, this is just another drop in the bucket. Just another drop in the bucket. Everybody knows this was taking place. Can we be honest with each other here? I mean, I know everybody wants to try to be nice about it, put on a good face. You're a good person. You're an outstanding citizen, yada, yada, yada. There is a lot of ugliness to this human element. There just is. There's a lot of bribery. There's a lot of backstabbing. There's a whole bunch of other things that take place. Everybody knows this. I almost want to just call and just let it all out in the open. Just let it all out. Just let everybody know your true intentions, because at least then you're honest. And then people can make a truly informed decision. You don't have to be deceitful. Don't lie. You know, if that's who you are, that's who you are. If you want to bribe people, bribe them. Go ahead. You don't? Don't. If you want it to be based on your merits like it should be, good. Then that's what you do. Then you stand principled, and that's the way you go. You want to bribe people, go ahead and bribe them. I don't like it, but at least just say it. Just say it, because whether or not you say it or not, you're going to do it. At least now we know. At least now we know. But everybody likes to hide. Everybody likes to put on a good face. Because the two that they're focusing on right now are Felicity Huffman and Lori Loughlin, former actress on Full House was her claim to fame. And then I saw on the news, I guess she has two daughters. One of them, I guess, is a pretty big social media, I don't even know what you call them, figure. And she was on there and she was talking about, she just wants to be a YouTube hit. She just wants to be an Instagram sensation. She just wants to be on camera and film everything. I don't really like school. I could tell that, honey, just by looking at you, which is okay. You don't have to like school. Maybe you should tell your parents that. Maybe you should tell your mother, don't bribe this guy $50,000, $100,000, whatever the hell it was. I don't care. And where's the outrage from the left and the feminist movement? Because evidently this young woman does not like university. She does not like to be educated in a formal setting. Is this against her will? Is this against her wishes? Is this child abuse? Isn't that the message we're supposed to hear from the left and from the feminist? This young woman, doesn't she have a right to her body and to her mind? Well, she doesn't like school. So why is her parents bribing school officials to get her in there? I mean, where's the outrage? You don't see it. You don't see it. You're never going to see it like that. So I think all of this stuff is connected. I think it's going to be March Madness. I think there's going to be an uproar sooner rather than later. I think President Trump is a showman. He's a salesman. And pun intended, he is waiting to pull the Trump card. There's a lot of stuff that still has to take place. I think would be his rationale. We still are waiting for the Mueller report. We still have these ridiculous investigations continuing from Jerry Nadler, Adam Schiff, Impeach 45, Maxine Waters, Elijah Cummings, and the list goes on. At least now you had Nancy Pelosi come out and say the president's not worth impeachment. Now, she could flip on she could do a 180 and reverse that, but I told you, she has terrible policies, but the woman is a political operator. You don't become the Speaker of the House by not knowing what to do, not knowing how to maneuver. She knows how to maneuver. I give her credit for that. Same thing like President Obama. Terrible policies. Terrible. But he was a political operator and knows how to maneuver. So you give credit where credit's due. But their policies were terrible. But back to President Trump. He is going to pull out the Trump card when a lot of this stuff makes its way through the media cycle. Somebody thinks they got him. I got a pair. This guy thinks he's got 2 pair. This guy thinks he's got 3 of a kind. This guy thinks he got him. He's got a full house. The next guy's got 4 aces. Well, Trump, he's got the royal flush. And he has it in spades. He knows it. And I think deep down a lot of these Democrats know it too. And when he pulls that card, I think a lot of stuff is just going to waterfall. It's just going to cascade. And it's going to be a lot of people, the names, the politicians, the movie stars, the business people. I think it's going to shake the conscience of the country. I really do. I really do. Because I think it's just that deep and dark. In a lot of cases, it's even evil. Because once you get into human trafficking and sex trafficking, you're really diving into the darkness that can exist within the human soul. And that is very scary. And, we want to think that it's just a few bad guys here and there, some low lives. I'm not going to be surprised if it's a lot of people look up to. I hope that's not the case. But I have a feeling that a lot of names are going to drop. That's just going to shake the conscience of this country. Now, I like to keep these podcasts, as you know, limited to about a half an hour. I don't want to take up too much of you guys' times. I love having you. But I do respect your time as well. So the Lisa Page FBI stuff, there's a lot to get to. So I'm going to save that for tomorrow, unless there's some other major breaking news that breaks overnight or tomorrow. But we'll definitely have a discussion on that because it's interesting and it all ties together with some of these name drops with a 2-tier justice system, if you're a Republican or a conservative, or if your name is Clinton. So I'm not going to have it. I'm not going to stand for it, neither should you. This is the United States of America. Nobody is above the law. Thank you so much for joining me today, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure having you as always. Please like, share, subscribe, get the word out, leave your comments. I would love to hear from you. This is the Capitol News. I am Alex Karitis. Godspeed.